Hello everyone. Welcome back to our channel. Today we bring the movie recap of a 2022 American psychological thriller, Don't Worry Darling. Spoilers ahead. The movie begins with some women dancing with a glass of cups on their heads and their husbands cheering them up. Then, a woman suddenly comes with several cups of whiskey and shares with them. Later that night, one of the men named Jack Chambers, and his wife Alice Chambers go out for a ride in their car. The following day, Alice prepares breakfast for her husband, Jack, as he is about to go out to work. Alice discusses what happened the previous night as he comes close to her. She then asks about the possible number of people attending the next party they would have together, so she can know the amount of tuna salad to make. Jack reveals to her that his boss, Frank, the founder and leader of the Victory Project, doesn't like tuna, and she's surprised to hear it. A vibration occurs in the house, and they both try to prevent things from falling. Alice tries to ask him what could have caused the tremor, but he doesn't answer her as he kisses her and leaves for work. Alice rushes out to give him his bag as she and her neighbors wave to their husbands as they head out to work in their cars. This act is a routine the men do every day as they head out to work at Victory headquarters while their wives stay at home to relax, clean, and prepare dinner for them. Later that day, Alice and some other women all head out on a bus for their daily yoga class. While in the building, Shelley, Frank's wife, and their instructor come in, and they all stand right to welcome her. Shelley informs them that the Victory Project has newly hired an employee named Bill Johnson, and his wife Violet will join them for the class. They all welcome her and begin with the class. Alice and her best friend Bunny discuss the new lady and her husband. Bunny overhears her kids playing with a water hose, and she goes to stop them. Alice goes to pack Jack's cloth and sees her friend Margaret holding a red toy and meditating with her eyes closed. While at home preparing lunch, Alice notices something strange about an egg she is holding. She tries to crush it with her hands, and it breaks easily with nothing inside. She takes more eggs, and the same thing happens, which startles her. Jack returns home at night, and as Alice welcomes him, they both engage in a hormonal game. The next scene shows all of them at the company town of Victory having a get-together in Frank's home. Alice, Bunny, and Violet discuss with each other as their husbands do the same. Shelley calls everyone's attention and begins to tell them about the purpose of their gathering. She welcomes Bill and his wife, and as she talks about her husband's project, Margaret interrupts her and asks, "Why are we here?" Everyone turns to look at her as her husband takes her away. Frank comes to clear the air and then talks about Margaret's question. He revolves around the suspicion Margaret caused everyone, then kisses Shelley and dismisses them. Alice doesn't seem to see Jack around, and as she searches for him, she sees Margaret's husband pointing out his hands to give her a pill. Margaret tells Alice they're hiding her, and everything doesn't seem fine. As Margaret continues to talk, her husband closes the curtain, and Alice leaves their premises. Alice finally sees Jack in Frank's bedroom. Jack engages her in a hormonal game. While they are so hooked on the game, Frank comes in, and Alice sees him. He shakes his head and leaves without disturbing them. In the next scene, the women discuss together, and Alice begins to talk about Margaret's condition. Bunny says it was all Margaret's fault as she lost her mind and took her son into the desert, where they prohibited them from going. She then tells them that Margaret knew how dangerous it was to go there and shouldn't have taken her son along, and she keeps claiming they took her son to punish her. They all hear a vibration and one of the women named Peg, nicknamed Always Pregnant, tries to ask what the men could be doing. Bunny replies by saying they are all there because they believe in the mission and need to support their husband. Alice begins to hallucinate and wakes up to see herself beside her husband. The next day, while on a bus ride across town, Alice sees a plane in the air with lots of smoke coming out of it. She notices the plane crash and asks the driver if he can see it. Alice tells him to stop and drive down there as they could need their help. However, the driver doesn't answer her, and she goes there herself. As Alice gets closer to the plane crash, she eventually gets to the headquarters, a semi-curved building covered with glass windows. She goes closer to the building, and as she touches one of the glasses, she experiences a bizarre hallucination of a series of events. She eventually wakes up and finds herself in her home and her husband preparing dinner. She is surprised about everything and tries to explain what happened to Jack, but he doesn't believe her. She then ends the talk by saying she had a weird dream. The following day after watching Jack leave for work, Alice experiences some strange things happening to her. She then receives a call from Margaret, who tells her that the Victory Project is all lies, and they can't stay there anymore. Alice doesn't believe her and cuts the call. Later that day, while the yoga session was going on, Alice began to hallucinate and saw Margaret hitting her head on the glass. Alice screams, and everyone stops to look at her. She notices it is all a dream, making her take her bag and leave the building. She heads to Margaret's home, where she sees her on the rooftop with a knife. Margaret uses it to slit her throat and then falls to the ground. Some men in red jumpsuits come to stop Alice from going toward her. At night, Alice explains Margaret's incident to Jack, but he doesn't believe her. She tries to convince him how sure what she saw was, but Jack begs her not to get hysterical. Alice then asks Jack what he does at the Victory Project. He responds by saying she does know he is a technical engineer, but she asks what they are doing, and he shouts at her to stop asking him questions. The next scene shows Dr. Collins, a sinister doctor working for the Victory Project, checking Alice's blood pressure. He tells her some pills he can describe, but Jack makes him understand that Alice doesn't need them. Alice asks Dr. Collins what he did to Margaret, and he responds by saying Margaret needed psychiatric and physical care. He said that she had significant troubles, outbursts, and paranoia, which made her husband Ted unable to handle his job well. As Dr. Collins leaves their house, he forgets one of his bags, and Alice quickly removes Margaret's details before he comes back for it. As he goes with Jack, she checks out the file only to discover Margaret's death. While at home, Alice begins to hallucinate once again, only for her to wake up and notice she is in the bathtub and her husband is already back home. The next scene shows them all at a special victory event organized by Frank. At the event, Alice notices Frank staring at her. While a lady performs some dance moves, Alice has delusions about what happened to Margaret and how she called her to tell her about it. All these make her terrified, and she begins to cry. Frank comes to the podium and addresses the audience. Alice tries to tell Jack that she wants to go home, but he does not answer her. Frank calls Jack to the stage and announces Jack's promotion to join the senior advisory board. Jack accepts the offer, and this makes Alice sad. Jack then dances before everyone, and Alice goes to the bathroom. Bunny comes to meet her there as she sees her crying. Alice explains Margaret's incident to Bunny and what also happened to her at the headquarters. Bunny gets angry hearing what she did and tells her she should be happy for her husband and not be selfish. She then stomps out of the bathroom. The next day, Jack and Alice invite their neighbors to their home to celebrate Jack's promotion with Frank and Shelley as special guests. However, Bunny and her husband, Dean, don't show up. While in the kitchen, Frank comes to meet Alice, and he tells her he is sorry Bunny didn't believe her. He went on to say that no one would believe her as she didn't believe in Margaret. Frank commends her for pushing him as he has been waiting for someone to challenge him and hopes she keeps going with her plans. Due to this confession made by Frank, Alice attempts to expose him while they are all having dinner. However, Frank manipulates her and makes everyone see her to be crazy. Shelley confronts Alice for her outburst towards Frank and leaves. The rest of the neighbors also leaves, and Frank calls Jack to meet him outside. Jack returns home, and Alice explains what occurred in the kitchen with Frank. Alice begs him that she doesn't want to be in Victory Town anymore and that they should leave. Jack agrees, and Alice is happy with his response. However, as they are about to leave, Jack keeps telling her he is sorry as some men in red jumpsuits come to take her out of the car. Alice sees herself in a place where she undergoes electroshock therapy. This therapy makes her begin to have visions of events that have happened in the past. She sees herself as a surgeon named Alice Warren, living with her boyfriend Jack, who is unemployed and doesn't like her tight work schedules. The next scene shows Alice returning to Victory Town as Bunny comes to hug her. Alice and Bunny have a time together with drinks, and as Bunny's kids arrive, they all run to hug Alice, who is also happy to see them. Bunny pretends not to see them as she lets her smoke. The following day, Alice watches Jack as he leaves for work. She then goes to do the house chores as usual. Jack returns home early, and Alice is happy and kisses him. She goes to get him his food, and as he sings, she sings along with him. Then, she begins to have hallucinations and flashbacks of a series of events that occurred to her. Alice gets to realize the whole truth through the hallucination. She realizes that the Victory Project is a simulated world created by Frank, and Jack is also behind everything that happened to her. As soon as Alice gets consciousness, Jack asks her what happened, but Alice stops him from coming close to her. Finally, Jack realizes she knows the truth, and she confronts him for everything he did to her. Jack shouts back by telling her that he did it for both of them and her happiness. Jack tries to get close to her and asks for her forgiveness. Alice asks him about the others, and he tells her he doesn't know about them. Alice then learns that all the wives are trapped there and that the kids are not real. She then asks Jack to free her, but he tries to strangle her, which makes her hit him with a glass cup. Frank receives a call about Jack's death. Bunny goes to Alice's home, and as she covers Jack's body with a cloth, she immediately tells Alice to leave for the headquarters. Alice tries to tell Bunny about all she got to know, And Bunny also makes her understand that she knows about it. She also tells Alice that anyone who dies in the simulation world also dies in the real world, and she must leave as soon as possible before they kill her. Alice asks her what she means by she knows, and Bunny replies by saying she has always known about the simulation but chose it because her kids are alive in the simulation world and not in real life. She also tells Alice the rest of the women don't know about it. As Alice comes out, the other men ask her about Jack and tell her to go back inside. Alice doesn't listen to them and keeps on walking. The other women all stare at Alice as she walks, and they also begin to know the truth about the town. Bunny quickly alerts Alice to head to the headquarters as she stops Dean from stopping her. Some men in red jumpsuits follow after her in a car. Dr. Collins and some men get close to her, but she manages to make them crash into each other's cars. Finally, Shelley also realizes the truth about Frank, and she stabs him to death. She gets close to the headquarters before her car gets stuck on the road. She quickly gets down and starts running as soon as she sees Frank's men getting close to her. The movie ends with Alice getting to the headquarters, and as she's about to touch the glass, she sees a vision of Jack telling her to stay with him. She ignores him and heads to the window to place her hands on it before Frank's men can get hold of her, and Alice wakes up in the real world gasping for air. So that's all for today. Thanks for watching. Anticipate our next interesting movie recap update.